Hello YouTube, I am Jay. This is part 4 in my series on how to build a no water change tank. And in this part I'm going to bust some myths about anaerobic zones killing your fish. So if you've been in the fishing hobby for a while, you probably heard that creating too deep of a substrate can create anaerobic zones. That anaerobic dead zones of no water flow is going to create nasty stuff that's going to kill all your fish, so you should try to avoid it at all costs. And I'm going to tell you why that myth is totally wrong, and why you don't have to worry about it at all. The myth goes that anaerobic zones are terrible. And the key of the issue here is this guy called hydrogen sulfide. It's H2S, and hydrogen sulfide forms in anaerobic zones. And hydrogen sulfide is highly toxic and it will kill your fish. So okay, anaerobic zones, or more technical term, which is anoxic zones. I'm using the term anaerobic because this is the term that is more commonly used, but it's actually an anoxic zone. So anaerobic zones, they produce hydrogen sulfide, and hydrogen sulfide is toxic, so it kills your fish. So the myth is right. If you have anaerobic zones, such as a very deep substrate, it's going to produce hydrogen sulfide, it's going to kill all your fish. Oh my god. Well, no. I'm going to teach you why that doesn't happen. So first, let's see why hydrogen sulfide forms in the first place. So you know that this is a carbon food. Some sort of food source, doesn't matter what it is. And as I discussed in denitrification, this carbon food can be burned up by using oxygen, which is the best. But if there's no oxygen, you can use nitrate, which is the second best. And this turns the nitrate into nitrogen gas. But there's these guys called sulfate reducing bacteria. And these guys, instead of breathing oxygen or nitrate, they have the ability to breathe sulfate. So it's the exact same thing as denitrification, except they are breathing sulfate, and this turns into the deadly hydrogen sulfide. So if you have an anoxic zone where there's no O2, the sulfate reducing bacteria can use the sulfate and convert it into hydrogen sulfide by breathing the sulfate in. So that is what happens if you have an anaerobic zone in your tank. So what do you do with it? Hydrogen sulfide is going to form. It is. So it's going to kill your fish. Well, no, because there is a way you can effectively neutralize hydrogen sulfide. So hydrogen sulfide is a really nasty guy, it's highly toxic, and you can neutralize it to sulfate, which is pretty much harmless. He's a chill guy, he doesn't care, he's not going to kill your fish. And how do you do that? Oxygen. It's as simple as that, you don't have to worry about it. So hydrogen sulfide forms in the absence of oxygen, and it will be neutralized in the presence of oxygen. So let's say you did what I told you, you created a pretty deep substrate like this. This is a substrate, say it's gravel or something, and the water itself is highly oxygenated, the surface is highly oxygenated, at the bottom there's no oxygen, it's anaerobic, or technically correctly anoxic, and hydrogen sulfide will form here along with nitrogen gas, which is harmless, it's going to fly away. And what happens to the hydrogen sulfide as it comes up? It's got to come up and get to the water to kill your fish, right? But as it hits this oxygen, it's going to get neutralized to sulfate, and it's going to come out as sulfate, vast majority of the time. So this guy is not going to cause problems as long as there's enough oxygen out here. And even if a small amount makes it through into the water, we have a very easy, very reliable way of detecting it. You do not need any fancy equipment. All you need is your nose. You will smell it. So hydrogen sulfide is very common in nature. It can form all over the place. So, and because it's so highly toxic, it has high toxicity and so common, human noses have evolved to be able to detect hydrogen sulfide very reliably. So in concentrations that are too low to kill your fish, you will smell the hydrogen sulfide, and it has a very characteristic smell. It has a smell of rotten eggs, and you will know when you smell it. So before it becomes a problem, you will detect it, even if hydrogen sulfide somehow manages to get into your tank. So you don't have to panic the moment you smell rotten eggs, because you know that that smell, it's not high enough to kill your fish. So hydrogen sulfide, even if you have a really deep substrate with anaerobic zones, as it's coming up, it's going to get neutralized, and even if enough comes out, you will be able to detect it before it becomes a problem to your fish. And I'm going to show you why that's not a problem. So here's the thing. There's a myth that hydrogen sulfide is going to kill your fish, right? But in order for this hydrogen sulfide to form in high quantities in the first place, first of all, you're going to need lots of that carbon food source. Without it, the sulfate reducing bacteria will not be able to breathe the sulfate. So you need lots of carbon, and you also need low oxygen. And that's going to increase hydrogen sulfide, and it's going to kill your fish. Well, the problem is, before this happens, your fish are already dead. They have suffocated. So as long as you have enough oxygen, that's not going to kill your fish, you will have enough oxygen to neutralize the hydrogen sulfide. And even if say your tank starts smelling nasty because of the hydrogen sulfide, what you do? Just add air stone. Just plop air stone in there, and you'll be fine. You just add more oxygen, and you can get rid of the hydrogen sulfide. So that is the end of this part. I just discussing how anaerobic zones or anoxic zones are not going to kill your fish, and even if you detect a problem, all you have to do is add an air stone in there to aerate the water properly. So that was how you don't have to worry about anaerobic zones. Next part, I will finally get on to the plants. Thanks for watching, guys.